try to my book haul cart. See, most people, they have a TBR cart where they keep the books that they haven't yet read. I have a cart filled with the books that I haven't yet hauled, because I've been collecting them since Christmas and I haven't showed you any of them yet. Are you ready to be empty? Like my bank balance and also possibly my soul. And welcome back to the chaos of the ever-evolving library. That's right, the frames are still on the floor. So very much in a classic case of, look over there, I'm going to show you some new books, in the hopes that you don't look very closely at everything else that's behind me. And also because I genuinely have not done a book haul since Christmas, and I need to get these things off of this cart. They think that I don't love them, but actually it's just that I don't like tidying up. But before I get to the new shinies, I first want to take a moment to thank the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands and thousands of classes for you to brush up on any skill that you like. We're a creative community here on BookTube, and all of us have a whole variety of side hobbies and side hustles. And anything that you could possibly want, you will find on Skillshare. It's a place to get inspired by all of the good ideas in front of you and make them your own. Now for me, lots of my side hobbies have become side hustles with the help of Skillshare, and I have now moved on to some more calming pursuits. I recently took a class from the lovely Laura called Save Your Plants.
Did you acquire a lot of houseplants during the pandemic and now some of them aren't doing so well? Maybe you are new to houseplants and you want to make sure you keep your babies thriving. Perhaps you're an experienced houseplant hobbyist, but you have that one plant that is causing you grief. Wherever you are on the houseplant spectrum, this course is for you.
You guys know that I am a huge plant mama. My house is as much jungle as Harry will let me turn it into, but even I have run across some really common problems that I just didn't know were a thing. I would consider myself to have fairly advanced plant knowledge, but Laura's class has genuinely saved some of my smaller babies and has now helped me with a new project.
Propagation. This last lesson is also your class project. Now, propagation can be a fun project just to make more plants, either to have more plants in your home, to give plants away to your friends, to sell.
That's right, I'm a propagating baby. I'm going to be having lots of little plant children. And as somebody who, as discussed already, likes some new shiny things, I'm delighted to say that there are new premium classes published every week, so there is always something new to learn and you will never get bored. So if you would like to join this vibrant creative community today and get learning, the first 1,000 people to use my code Literary Diversions or to click my link down in the description below will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So come on, join me in the learning, because the learning's cool. Alright, let's get started. There are a lot of books here. These piles are many and large. Let's start with the heaviest stack, which comes all together. These are the absolutely stunning Fairy Loot editions of the Diviner set by Libba Bray. And we all just take a moment of silence for the fact that we finally have a matching set of these books. You guys know that I am a huge fan of this series, and that I definitely went through a period where I would not stop talking about it. In case you are one of the, I'm going to put these down, these are very heavy. In case you are one of the very few people who missed that little hyperfixation phase of mine, The Diviners is set in the 1920s and we follow Evie O'Neill, who is living in a little backwater town. But Evie has a very unique talent for being able to unearth the truth when she touches objects belonging to people. She uses this particular talent at a party one day and she really should not have done that, and she is unceremoniously shipped off to her uncle in New York to get away from the huge amount of drama that she has just caused. Boo-hoo, what's an aspiring flapper to do when she gets to New York? Evie wants to party, and she has every intention of doing just that, except that Evie's uncle owns a rather strange establishment, a museum for the occult. And just as she arrives in New York, her uncle gets dragged into an ongoing police investigation as an occult advisor. And the rest of it goes from there. Just read it. If you like ghosts, if you like clairvoyance, if you like creepy, slightly weird nursery rhymes, this is the series for you. And if you can get your hands on these absolutely stunning Fairy Loot editions, do not despair, because the audiobooks are phenomenal and they actually sing the creepy little song to you, which I really advocate, but not in the dark at 2 AM with insomnia. Oakley dokley, from that beautiful set we are going to go on to a couple of proofs. This one being the first one, and one of my most anticipated books for the year when I discovered that it was coming out. This is the Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi, and it is John Scalzi at his weird sci-fi semi-horror best. This follows Jamie Gray, who is just minding his own business in New York. We're in New York a lot apparently at the start of this haul. He is delivering a takeaway and he bumps into an old friend who's like, wow, this is a crappy job, do you want a better one? His friend works for an animal preservation society, and of course Jamie thinks that's a great idea until he discovers that this preservation society is not actually on Earth. At least not our Earth. They're in an alternate dimension, and these animals are massive dinosaur-like kaiju Godzilla monsters. And these monsters are being hunted and need help. The tagline says they're big, they're bad, and they're about to be extinct. As would I if I was in this world, let's be perfectly honest. I shall be reading it even though it is not on my TBR, thank you. I will not be taking questions at this time. Next up, also from Panmac via Book Break, we have We Had to Remove This Post by Hannah Bervoets. This is a really short and yet I am told incredibly disturbing little novel. It is about Kaylee, who works at a company that does content moderation. So they look at the posts that get reported on the internet as having really not okay for anybody's eyes content. They review them and they decide whether they break the guidelines or whether they can go back up for public consumption. It's a pretty grueling job. They see a lot of the nastier points of humanity that they don't particularly like, but Kaylee needs the money and so does everybody else who works there. The back of the book says, soon the job seems to change them all, shifting their worlds in alarming ways. How long before the moderator's own morals bend and flex under the weight of what they see? I also love that each of the chapters starts with this little blackout page. That's a very nice touch. I am very excited for this one. Lol. Well, the first book that I picked up in the category of makes me happy is Echo by Thomas Olde Huevelt. You guys may recognise this author's name because he wrote one of my favourite horror books ever in the entire world, Hex. But when I saw this one, I was like, okay, is this author just writing all of Leanne's favourite things? So first we had like Cursed, Creepy Town and Witch, and now we've got privileged white men killing themselves on mountains, which is another sort of vague subgenre of non-fiction that I am very interested in. I know a lot about Everest. Okay, let's move on. Echo follows Nick, who is a travel journalist and mountaineer who wakes up one day from a coma and discovers that his climbing buddy is missing and presumed dead. As his memories slowly start to come back, he remembers that he was climbing a very remote place in the Swiss Alps, and that when he and his climbing buddy got there, they got the distinct feeling that they were not alone. Complete silence lay in this valley and they didn't know what they were climbing into, but that is all that he can remember. Cut to Sam Avery, an American student who has heard about Nick and is glad that he is alive and he is coming home, but Nick's incident has stirred some horrible memories in Sam, some memories that he thought he had managed to completely bury, and he realises that along with these memories maybe something else from those Alps has awakened inside him, and that maybe now nobody around him is really safe. So excited for this one. I am so excited even that after I read it I may reread Hex, because I need an excuse and this might just be it. Next up we have another beautiful edition of a beloved book. This is the Fall Seasons edition of the Thomas Nelson paper cut classics that they do of Dracula by Bram Stoker. If I tilt it this way, you can see how intricate all of these little cuts are. Each of these editions are produced in small batches, so there's only 10,000 of these in existence. This is number 305 because all of them are individually numbered, and both the back and front is this absolutely stunning laser cut. They're just absolutely beautiful. They feel like really decadent, and what I've discovered is that I don't want to read or reread my favourite classics unless I have got them in a pretty edition. Like, I feel like I'm very over the stage in my life where I'm happy with my old beat up university copies of these books. So here we go, the start of my potential seasons editions addiction. Now, next up we have the start of what is essentially a tiny queer fantasy haul. I recently realised that when it comes to fantasy, all I want to read recently, literally all I want to read, is queer fantasy. Because let's face it, fantasy, sci-fi, urban fantasy, they are the only genres in the entire world where anything possible can exist, including the complete absence of homophobia. So once I realised that that was very much all I wanted in my life, I did a little bit of internet research, and what sits before me is the majority of a haul that happened after that Google session. I regret nothing. So the first book that I have is The Helm of Midnight by Marina Lostetter, and I am going to read you the blurb on this one. I try not to whenever possible, but the blurb just, oh, it absolutely sold it for me. It's like queer fantasy meets serial killer meets ghost, and are those not all of the things that Leanne likes? With deckled edges actually, which I was not expecting but was thoroughly happy to discover. So the synopsis says, in a daring and deadly heist, oh, I forgot there was a heist in it too, there's also a heist, I mean really. In a daring and deadly heist, thieves have made away with an artifact of terrible power, the death mask of Louis Charbonne. Made by a master craftsman, it is imbued with the spirit of a monster from history, a serial murderer who terrorised the city. Now Charbonne is loose once more, killing from beyond the grave. But these murders are different from before, not simply random, but the work of a deliberate mind probing for answers to a sinister question. Rona Hervath and her fellow regulators must enter the mind of madness to stop this insatiable killer while facing the terrible truths left in his wake. Also, every chapter has got this really interesting little formatting thing where the first little paragraph seems to come from the character who is named here, and it's in first person, and then the rest of it is in third person, and I've never seen that before, and I'm very excited. I heard somebody say recently, I don't know what other word to use other than excited for a book haul, and I'm like, I will say excited 10,000 times if I wish to, because I know that you guys are just as excited as I am. That's what we are. We're excitable little book beans. Let's just wear it on our sleeves. Let us like what we like. This next one is also queer adult fantasy, and it also features a heist, which I'm also not sorry about. This is Among Thieves by MJ Kuhn. I've actually heard a lot about this one. A lot of the queer fantasy that I've got here are books that I have googled and then had to do research on that I hadn't heard about before, but I have seen this cover, I feel like, everywhere. It only came out last year, but it somehow infiltrated my Goodreads feed and I just couldn't get away from it. So this is about Rhea. She has been nicknamed the Butcher. She has a sharp knife and a sharp tongue, and she is fairly well known in the 5 cities that she haunts. But the problem is that Rhea has a secret, and it means that her life is never peaceful. She has to hop from city to city to city to try and stay one step ahead from the Guildmaster. He is the sovereign of all 5 of these cities, and he will stop at pretty much nothing to get his hands on Rhea. But as the blurb says, even the most powerful man can be defeated. It's just that Rhea can't actually do it on her own, and she's kind of got to that point where she's realised that and is like, well crap, I need to ask for help. That's not exactly something that I am very skilled in. So Rhea ends up teaming up with the Saints for just one job, just this one job. The Saints are a group of miscreants, thieves and degenerates who are definitely up for hire but are definitely not Rhea's cup of tea. And with these questionable new allies, she has to make her way all the way to the Guildmaster's stronghold, the most defended place in all of these 5 cities. Good luck to them, I say, and I hope much queerness and drama abounds. Next up, still on that high fantasy bandwagon, I have The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. Now, I am having difficulty working out if this is completely adult high fantasy or if it has one foot in YA fantasy, because it's been shelved all sorts of places on Goodreads and it's been blurred by a whole bunch of authors who do both or one or the other, so I don't really know what to do with it. All I do know is that it is queer and that it was also blurbed by Alex E. Harrow, who we know that I absolutely adore, so I am hoping that it stands up to scrutiny. This is also one of those books that no matter where you go only has a really tiny synopsis that gives like nothing away. It's literally less than a paragraph, so I'm just going to read it to you. It says, the Emperor's reign has lasted for decades, his mastery of bone shard magic powering the animal-like constructs that maintain law and order. But now his rule is failing and revolution is sweeping across the Empire's many lands. When the Emperor refuses to recognise his daughter as heir to the throne, she vows to prove her worth by mastering the forbidden art of bone shard magic. Yet such magic carries a deadly cost. Did you see me nearly hit myself with that? The amount of times that I have taken a chunk out of my tempo with a book in a book haul video is countless, and all of them have had to be bleeped in some way. So this one is a somewhat speculative high fantasy book. Again, queer like everything else on this list. Well, I stopped saying it, probably not. And it is possibly my favourite blurb that I've ever read in the history of ever. This is The Library of the Unwritten by A.J. Hackwith, and it takes place in a library in a neutral space in hell. In this space we follow Claire, who is the head librarian, whose duties include putting together books that have been loved in a hard way in their life and repairing them, all the usual librarian duties of maintaining the collection and cataloguing, and also keeping an eye on all the books who are in danger of having a character materialising and causing havoc. One day when Claire is not paying particular attention, a hero materialises from one of those books and escapes. And not only is it Claire's job on the line, but it's potentially all of hell. In order to catch this hero, Claire needs to enlist former muse and current assistant Brevity and nervous demon courier Leto. And they go off on a fun adventure to track this hero down across the hellscape. I don't know guys, it sounds hilarious. It sounds like exactly the blend of like fantasy and sort of like urban fantasy that I really enjoy. Sean Maguire's blurb on the back says it's like The Good Place meets Law and Order, the bibliophile crime unit, and I can't. That sent me, I need this in my life, I need to read it soon. And then finally for the queer fantasy, we have got 12 Kings by Bradley Beaulieu. Speaking of people who blurb things, Robin Hobb says that this is a breathtaking ride, and that's all of the hint that I need, I need to read this. Again, we're going with a very tiny blurb on the back. It doesn't give you a lot of information. Essentially, it tells you about the land of Sharakai, which has been presided over by 12 kings. These 12 kings had secrets that they tried to bury from the people who lived in their lands. But one day, an assassin found one of those buried secrets and made off with it. The 12 kings hunted her down and they killed her, and they hoped that the secret would once again die with her. But that assassin had a daughter, and that daughter has decided that nothing is dying with her, thank you very much, that she's going to avenge her mother's legacy and show everybody the truth about these kings. So this is like 590 pages, but I think it's probably more like 650 pages if the writing was, you know, human-sized. This one's a little bit more of a commitment than some of the others on this list. but I am still here for it. And now let's break away from fantasy. No more fantasy on this list, I promise. And I want to show you two books that my mum actually got for me. My mum is always desperate to buy me books that aren't on any list that I give to her. This has unfortunately resulted in the past in a lot of duplicates, but occasionally it unearths a gem, and she sent my poor father into a bookshop to specifically ask for these two books that she had found from somewhere. And actually she picked so well, so amazingly well, in that she managed to get one book that I had never heard of and one book that I was very excited for but did not yet own. So the one that I had never heard of was this one. This is The Undiscovered Deaths of Grace McGill by C.S. Robertson, and it is about a crime scene cleaner, but she doesn't just clean crime scenes, she cleans any scenes of unexpected deaths. So that includes deaths from natural causes or deaths from accidents, anywhere that needs the bodily fluids and biological things removed afterwards. Grace McGill goes in and does that. But then it says, when an old man lies undetected in his flat for months, gross, it seems an unremarkable life and an unnoticed death. But Grace knows that everyone has a story and that all deaths mean something more. So this is a thriller with nothing really to give you any clues in the blurb about where it's going. It's a shame that the cover is doing the thing that I hate the most about thriller covers, with the psychedelic colours of the font on a just weird half person's face background. But you know, we forgive it and we try it anyway. And then the other thing that she got me is My Pen is the Wing of a Bird, new fiction by Afghan women. This is, as the collection says, a landmark collection because it is the first collection of any Afghan women's writing which has been translated into English. It says that it explores themes of family, work, childhood, friendship, war, gender identity and cultural traditions. And that makes me so excited. This is one of those books that as soon as I knew that it existed, it started following me everywhere, around every indie bookshop that I passed. So I'm really glad that I didn't pick it up before my birthday, and now I've got it here. Now I have got 5 really random books left here that didn't really have any categories like the rest of them to fall into, and I'm gonna try and get through them pretty quickly because I'm betting this has been a pretty long video by this point, but also because I am currently on sprints with my patrons and I can see that the timer is racing down. The first of them is a book that I am sure tons and tons of you know everything about, and I really don't need to go into in any kind of detail. It is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I managed to avoid this one for such a long time. I managed to not pick it up for such a long time, and then the hype finally got me and I was finally like, okay, just give me a copy. It does help that there is a particularly beautiful snake on the cover of this one. So this one is a dark academia. I believe that it is set in an alternate version of Yale wherein magic exists in the world, and we are following Alex, who is in Yale's freshman class. Alex is a former dropout and the sole survivor of a really horrific incident, and she's hoping that this could be a fresh start where she can just get away from everything that's plagued her, from all of the labels that she carries around. But it turns out that Alex's fresh start is not exactly so fresh. When she gets to Yale, she is tasked with monitoring all of Yale's secret societies, which means she knows a lot of stuff that a lot of other people don't know, and knowing stuff comes with a pretty big price tag. I must admit, when I did the thing where I read the first couple of pages of this, as I do with every new book that comes into my house, I did get stuck reading it, and Harry had to kind of like reset me and get me back on with the rest of my day. So I think it is safe to say that this is as addictive as everybody says it is in terms of the writing, but I am very interested to see if it stands up in terms of the plot. Next up, I have got this absolute beauty. This is A Fatal Crossing by Tom Hindle, and this is essentially marketed for fans of Agatha Christie. I find that that is one of two things, that either it's because it's a detective drama set in the 1930s, which I think this one actually is, or it's because it is a locked door mystery where the characters are all stuck in one place, and so it had to be somebody who was there, which again I think that this is. Oh, okay, it's set in 1924, so we missed the 30s by just a little bit, but I mean, Really, that aesthetic is saying Christie's Poirot to me, right? So it's set on the Endeavour, which is a ship carrying 2,000 passengers from Southampton to New York, and then an elderly man is found dead. Initially, everybody thinks that it's just very like natural causes. He's elderly, he's on a big voyage, he was out on deck, and then suspicion starts to mount. Because you see, on board is James Temple, who is described as a strong-minded Scotland Yard investigator, and he is not so quick to dismiss all of the rumours that first mate Birch is. So together it looks like they're forming a little bit of like a Poirot and Hastings dynamic, and they are going to investigate this crime with all of the strange cast of characters that have collected together on this boat. Now, you guys might remember that a couple of months ago I read You Have the Right to Remain Fat by Virgie Tovar, which is a book about body positivity and dismantling the diet industry and the health industry's view of fat bodies and their right to be in the world and on media and visible in any way. And when I was talking about that book and how much I enjoyed it, one of the comments on that video gave me the recommendation for Bad Fat Person by Ali Owens, and when I looked it up it looked like exactly the type of book that I am feeling like reading right now. This is both Ali Owens' memoir and also a non-fiction book on learning where fat phobia really comes from, and it is really funny. It's really funny and really engaging, and it feels like sitting down and having a conversation with a friend so far, so I'm very excited to continue on with this one, and I will let you know what I thought of it in a future wrap up, I am sure. Second to last, and also for my birthday, we have a book that my lovely friend Sarah gave me, and she got me this book, which is the Covent Garden Ladies by Hallie Rubenhold. You guys will probably recognise Hallie Rubenhold's name. She wrote The Five, which is an investigation into the victims of Jack the Ripper from the victims' points of view, and very much keeping the Ripper in the background, and that is essentially exactly what this is. So the Covent Garden Ladies was a pamphlet which was put together by the men of the time to list all of the area's sex workers and their specialities, and it was published without any of these women's consent and widely circulated. It was one of the 18th century's biggest scandals, and it ruined a lot of these women's lives, and true to form, Hallie Rubenhold has looked at this little pamphlet that ruined these women from the point of view of the women who are talked about in it, and not from the point of view of the men who collected it and published it. So I am very, very excited. The Five was phenomenal. It's one of the best non-fiction books I have ever read in my entire life, so I'm so excited. Thank you, Sarah, for sending me this one. And finally, we have got this one. This is Come Closer by Sarah Gran. It is the creepiest cover ever in the entire world. Look at the spine. It's just it's a very attractive little horror-y book, and it is, I guess, a creepy haunted apartment instead of a creepy haunted house story, and that is all I know about it because it is so short. It's what, 160 pages long. So the blurb on the back says, "There was no reason to assume anything out of the ordinary was going on. Strange noises in the apartment, impulsive behaviour, intense dreams. It wasn't like everything went wrong all at once. Shoplifting, fighting, blackouts. There must be a reasonable explanation for all of this." It makes me feel so gross already. I'm very, very excited. So, minus the diviners, which I've had to put in another surface, this was it. This is all of the books that have come into my house since Christmas time. It's a fairly sizable haul, I admit, but I am kind of doing a little project that I'll tell you guys about a bit later. And because of that, I'm kind of trying to set myself up with a good amount of different kinds of book for the rest of the year. Was that suitably vague for you? I hope so. So as always, please tell me what you think of the books that I have hauled here today. Have you read any of them? Have you loved them? Will you be picking them up because I have made them sound incredibly appealing? Tell me all about it down in the comments. And don't forget, if you too would like to join Skillshare, you can use my exclusive code Literary Diversions or my link, which is at the top of my description down below. The first 1,000 people to click that link will get a 1 month free trial trial of Skillshare. If you have enjoyed this video, please hit that thumbs up button because it really does help to support my channel. If you are new here, then please consider subscribing and sticking around so that you can see what I think of these books when I get around to reading them. And I will speak to all of you guys really soon. Bye! And deeply unfortunately, I have forgotten to take a thumbnail for this video, so I'm going to have to gather up all these books, and then try and hold them up all in one go. Yay!